And we're back with a quick look at where the race for the Republican nomination stands. After yesterday's victories, Ted Cruz has narrowed Donald Trump's lead in the delegate count. We caught up with him Friday at a gathering of college Republicans just outside Washington. Let me ask you about your political path. Is it to win the nomination, the delegates outright, or is it to just deny and get to Cleveland and figure it out there?
Look, we're campaigning to win, and I will say anytime you hear people talking about a brokered convention, I think that is the fevered talk of the Washington establishment. The Washington establishment is in a panic. They're confused. They don't understand what's happening. And their favorite candidates, the ones that they want to win, are not getting the votes. But if a bunch of Washington deal makers try to step in a brokered convention and steal the nomination, I think we will have a manifest uprising. If you want to beat Donald Trump, and I don't think Donald Trump is the right nominee to go up against Hillary Clinton, if you want to beat him, you got to beat him at the ballot box, and our campaign is the only campaign that has demonstrated we can do so over and over again.
Do you think there's something illegitimate, though, about trying to have a brokered convention, work it out at a convention?
You know, I think if it's a bunch of Washington deal makers and lobbyists who want to parachute in their preferred candidate because they don't like what the voters are doing, I think that is illegitimate. I think it's wrong.
Ronald Reagan in 1976 used the convention to try and beat Gerald Ford, so there wasn't anything inherently bad about that.
But there's a difference there when that's coming from the people, when it's a battle of the people. A lot of the folks pushing a brokered convention in Washington don't want it to be based on the people. They want to drop in their favorite candidate and try to stifle the will of the people. I think that would be an enormous mistake.
Let me ask you about what the contest coming up. Michigan, Ohio, Florida. Ohio and Florida winner take all states. How are you going to do well in those states when you had trouble in Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Tennessee, which should have been good for you?
Well, listen, you say we had trouble. We earned delegates in just about every one of those states. Those were proportional states, and we did very, very well.
You were expected to win.
Well, you know, we were not expected to win based on the polling and where we are. And Donald Trump is unique and one of a kind. A year ago, no one anticipated Donald Trump, and he's changed the rules. You know, a year ago, we had 17 candidates. And what we've seen in the field is the field is narrowed. It's narrowed dramatically. And I think coming out of Super Tuesday, what Super Tuesday demonstrated is that if you don't think Donald's the right candidate to go up against Hillary Clinton, there's one campaign that has beat him not once, not twice, but 5 times. And that is our campaign. We beat him overwhelmingly in Iowa. We beat him in Oklahoma. We beat him in Alaska. We beat him in Minnesota. And we beat him overwhelmingly in my home state of Texas.
Have you had any conversations, or has anybody approached you about any kind of an alliance to stop Trump?
Listen, I'm having conversations with all sorts of people. And what we're seeing is we're seeing supporters from other candidates coming and joining us, whether they were with Jeb Bush, whether they were with Chris Christie, whether they were with Ben Carson, whether they've been with Marco Rubio or Rand Paul. We're seeing people come together because they're recognizing that their candidates were not in a position to beat Donald. And if Donald is the nominee, it is a catastrophe. Hillary wins. We lose the Supreme Court for a generation. We lose the Bill of Rights, and we lose the Senate.
But any of these conversations in terms of jointly acting to deny him, not coming together behind Ted Cruz?
Look, my focus is very simple. It is on winning 1,237 delegates to be the Republican nominee. We are on a path to do so. Coming out of Super Tuesday, fewer than 100 delegates separate Donald Trump and me. And so as much as the media wants to just have a coronation, and listen, frankly, one of the reasons the media wants Donald to be the nominee is because the media knows Donald can't win the general, that Hillary would wallop him. Donald may be the only person on the face of the planet that Hillary Clinton can beat. And all of the attacks on Donald that the media is not talking about now, you better believe come September, October, November, if he were the nominee, every day on the nightly news would be taking Donald apart, and the stakes are too high for us to risk that.
The media also thought that he wasn't going to get this far, so that's hardly it.
That's true at first, but let's be clear. The media has given Donald Trump hundreds of millions of dollars of free advertising. When you put Donald, when every press conference is carried live on every television station, and you essentially have a massive in-kind contribution from the media, that's helped create this phenomenon. And then I think an awful lot of reporters, I can't tell you how many media outlets I hear, you know, have this great expose on Donald, on different aspects of his business dealings or his past, but they said, you know what? We're going to hold it to June or July. We're not going to run it now.
You're saying reporters have told you that?
They've absolutely.
And from which organizations have they told you?
You know, look, I'm not going to out media outlets, but I can tell you there is so much there. When was the last time people are bringing up his tax returns, for example? We had a debate last night. Didn't hear a word about his tax returns. Every other serious candidate. I could have, and I do often. But as Mitt Romney rightly observed, the fact that Donald won't hand over his tax returns suggests there's a bombshell in there. The fact that journalists are not raising the question of what Donald Trump told the New York Times editorial board. The reports are...
But the journalists brought it up, which gave you the platform to talk about it. So surely they are. BuzzFeed wrote about it, so they are talking about it.
You know, I promise you, come the general election, that will be the singular focus of the media. And I think Republicans, we've been burned by that before. We're not interested in losing again, particularly when the stakes, I think, are catastrophic.
Conservatives used to talk a lot about the coarsening of the culture going, and that it was a job of a conservative politician to stand up and say no more. Has this campaign improved the culture or made it worse?
Well, listen, there's no doubt that there are aspects of this campaign that have gone into the gutter. I mean, we saw moments with Donald Trump and Marco Rubio engaging in insults, engaging in off-color jokes, just getting nastier and nastier and nastier and throwing mud. My approach, John, I'm not going to play that game. I'm not going to engage in the insults. I'm not going to throw the mud. I don't really have any views on the sizes of any parts of Donald Trump's anatomy, and I'm not interested in talking about that. But what I am interested in talking about is the issues facing the American people. Millions of Americans are facing stagnant wages, are not having jobs. My top priority is bringing back jobs and raising wages, and we're going to do that by repealing Obamacare, passing a flat tax, abolishing the IRS, reining in the federal regulators, stopping amnesty, and securing the borders. But that's my priority.
You said last week when we talked, you said Donald Trump is entertaining. But isn't that the trick? It's entertaining, but then this other stuff slips in, and that's the way in which people, conservatives I've talked to for years, have said that's the way the culture slips. And it's the job of a politician to stand up and say, no, there are guardrails here.
Well, you know, listen, think about what presidents have meant in history. Think of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Think of FDR saying the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Think of JFK saying, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And you know, I think people at home are asking themselves, how would we feel if our children came in repeating the words of the President of the United States if that president was Donald Trump? And if it would embarrass you to have your children repeat the words of the president, that's not a good thing. A president should unify us, should appeal to our better angels, should appeal to our shared values that make America who we are. And that is how I'm trying to campaign. I think that's what the American people are looking for.
Donald Trump said there needs to be flexibility on immigration. When you talked about the New York Times and the off-the-record conversation, why not? He's right, of course. In negotiation, there's flexibility, right?
He is most absolutely not right. But it was a stunning aspect of the debate that he said over and over again, flexibility, flexibility, flexibility. Actually, that's one of the reasons why we're selling now yoga mats on our website, tedcruz.org. They're Breathe yoga mats. That if you find yourself boiling over with rage, just spend some time doing yoga and breathing, and maybe it'll help you relax. But listen. Conservatives are used to seeing Republican candidates run to the right in the primary and then run to the left in the general. It's part of the reason we're so frustrated, so angry. We're tired of politicians lying to us. What was amazing about this debate, John, is Donald is already running to the left, and he's not even out of the primary. I mean, in the debate this week, Donald stood up there and said to Marco Rubio, I agree with you, Marco. I understand why you compromised and were flexible negotiating with Chuck Schumer on the Gang of Eight. Now, this is the Donald Trump who has made immigration the centerpiece of his campaign, who said he agreed with Marco Rubio supporting the Gang of Eight amnesty bill. That was stunning.
The last question is something that puzzles me, is that you talk about he's going to be a president, you can't even let your children watch TV. Marco Rubio says he's a con man, all of these terrible things. And then at the end, you're asked if you'll still support him, and you do. Doesn't that undermine all of these criticisms that say he's going to be such a danger to conservatism and Republican values?
Well, listen, I think, number one, Hillary Clinton as president would be even more catastrophic. She would be a third term of Barack Obama. So I cannot support Hillary Clinton. But number two, at the outset of this campaign, I promised I would support the Republican nominee. And I am someone who keeps his word. You know, this past week on Super Tuesday, in the state of Texas, we won an overwhelming victory. We won Texas by 17 points, and that was particularly meaningful because the people of Texas, they know me. They know my heart. They are the people that I made promises to. When I ran for Senate, I promised, you elect me, I'll lead the fight against Obamacare, I'll lead the fight against amnesty, I'll lead the fight against our debt, and I'll lead the fight to protect religious liberty, the Second Amendment, and the Bill of Rights. And the reason we won an overwhelming victory in Texas is because Texans said, Ted, you've kept your word. And I'll tell you, John, as president, I'll do the very same thing.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Senator Cruz, thank you.
Thank you very much.